place to do all these Zoom interviews. I don't have a green screen. I can't make it look like I'm flying in the clouds on top of some mythical. So. Oh, hold on. Let's see. I gotta go back here. Okay, you and me, Robert, we got something deeply in common.
Which one?
Well, other than the fact that we're both Asian men, but
I could tell. Yeah.
Cerberus, what an underrated, incredible graphic novel. I mean, it is something accredited with taking comics to a different level, and I think it's just brilliant, really interesting. Plus, those backgrounds. Insane.
Oh, Gerhardt's amazing.
Gerhardt's amazing. I'm a big comic book guy. I've got a lot of really close friends in the comic industry, and so
that's awesome.
This has been something I've always been interested in.
Have you ever thought about writing a comic?
Sure. I mean, I have stories that could be told for sure, and myself and Dan Panosian did pitch an idea to Marvel around Wolverine. Ooh. And that's as much as I'll say about it, but they didn't go for it. And there's always something. I'm close enough that to that kind of thing that it could happen for sure. And I'm on an alternate cover of Deadpool that Dave Johnson did. Was a take at DC's pushing advertising into the borders, right? Like there was I don't know, I don't buy singles anymore, but DC was having the advertisements like right into the frames and everything. And so Dave did a satirical cover for Deadpool, and now that thing apparently is worth a bunch of money, which is insane. I'm on the cover of it. It should be devalued.
Well, you at the very least you want to get a cut.
Sure, why not?
Sweet. Okay, so yeah, like we're an AEW podcast. We watched the last Bloodsport.
I listened because I wanted to, in case there was any dubious comments, and then I could just throw them back in your face.
We loved it.
I have a list.
Honestly, the best is hearing Teresa having her like Santa Claus story interrupt. But here's the thing. This is what I always say to folks, and I'll get people on social media. They go, "Is this real or is it worked?" And or is this pro wrestling or is this MMA? And I'll just put yes. Is it real?
So
yes,
intense.
It is real. And that's why we are the hardest hitting event in professional wrestling, because people are actually hitting each other.
It's so intense. I'm just shocked. But it also helps, I think, someone like myself, where even though I watch wrestling all the time and talk about it all the time, I consider myself a passive wrestling fan. I'm not as knowledgeable as a lot of people like Robert, for example.
Totally fine.
So watching it, I learned so much more about the actual art of wrestling itself, not necessarily the flourishes and the things that visually are stimulating, but
sure. Well, I got that impression after listening to you guys go over the real bulk of the event and getting towards the end of it, and you had this point where you said after watching this, it made the smaller, or what is usually reduced to smaller elements in your normal professional wrestling, now have more importance to you. And Absolutely. So, I mean, that's not the intent of this show per se. I just want to show, the best, most intense action I can in the best way that I know how, from the philosophies of the people that, taught me professional wrestling. But yeah, side effects like that are wonderful. I love hearing that people can now have more interest in what they see in the ring and be more invested, because one thing that struck out to me from going to indie shows and then watching the landscape of professional wrestling is people seem to just not really care that much. And I don't mean like they don't care, like they didn't want to be there, but they're watching a match and they just treat so much of it as just like it doesn't matter until there's a certain point comes and they're like, okay, now I care. Now I'm going to pay attention. And I thought, man, that really sucks, because one, I mean, from a fan perspective, you're actually losing out on investment. Like you could be more entertained by this, not just in a surface level way of like cheering or whatever, or, you know, that sort of thing, but you can, you know, on a deeper where even you might not have anything to say right now because you're too intent at watching what's going on. The other thing is I feel like, well, from the wrestler's perspective, they're out there beating the hell out of each other and getting launched over this and dropped on that for things that don't matter, right? And then you've only got like another like a 5-minute end of the match, and like, okay, now we care. Now we're going to pay attention. Now we're going to stop, you know, chanting slogans or doing whatever, and now we're going to sit down and actually pay attention. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I think that's kind of inefficient, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, like, so, but you like Bloodsport doesn't have one of the elements that does that. Like the last AEW, like Eddie Kingston cut this promo, and I just realized, like, oh my God, like he's talking about relationships in a way that no one who does promos does. Like this thing that we have together, this is why I want to fight you. And there isn't, you know, that sort of element in Bloodsport. Is that a thing that you want to bring to it, or do you have other ways of?
I mean, when you look at professional wrestling products, I mean, on the surface, you might say, oh, well, they're all under that umbrella. But if you look at an AEW or WWE or any of the major promotions, you know, they have this whole structured out edifice, right? And so they know that they've got all these guys locked up under a certain amount of contractual time. They can put all these things into motion and create things where they want to, and know that they can then follow them through to an endpoint. We are an indie promotion. I know we don't necessarily look like much of an indie promotion if you watch Bloodsport 4 and 5. I mean, we spent a lot of time doing production on this one, and we are working with 5B Artist Management, who, you know, are more known for managing Megadeth and Slipknot and Lamb of God and things like that, Monomarth. So we have access to some incredibly high level people. All the GCW folks are as down and dirty, street worthy as possible. So they have an incredible structure on how to get shit done and get into places that you wouldn't know about. And combined for all of us together, putting our heads in, and we were able to, you know, put together an incredibly well produced product, especially for if you knew how much it, you know, the kind of costs that go into it, and the amount of man hours that we use to make up for things like not being AEW, you know.
Right.
But so they can follow these things through in a way that you don't necessarily have that luxury, and it can be tough to. And maybe this is a bit too behind the curtain, or maybe more behind the curtain, I should say, than normally I like to get into, because I really love to try and steer everyone back to the ring as much as possible, because that's the thing we're putting so much effort into. And the behind the scenes, you can hear a chunk about something happening back there and be like, oh, you know, I got it. But it's like, man, this stuff gets so deep, and it can be such it can be a thing that involves so many different moving pieces, so many different people, that it's really hard to get the fans a real understanding of what it is. And then you also kind of have to weigh that, am I ruining the magic trick if I do that? And I would, you know, I don't want to ruin the magic trick for people, because when I see a magic trick that I like, you know what, I love it. And I even know a little bit about how sleight of hand works, and, you know, some of the things about magic, but I don't care. I just want to see a good thing, you know? Yeah. And so I'm getting long on the tooth on this, but it's harder for us to do things that you might expect as just a given for professional wrestling. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Well, it certainly seems as if you've been very successful at turning some of those possible limitations and liabilities into virtues. With what you are steering towards, like we're not necessarily familiar with all of the shows you had done prior to 4 and prior to the quarantine, but we were all so taken with the purity and the starkness of what kind of show you were doing this time around, and how that really seemed to serve you. What was that going into that?
Well, I highly recommend that you guys go back and watch Bloodsport 1 through 3. I think they are really well done shows, and I've got a lot of pride in bringing in people that you might not know about, or folks that you expect to see in a certain light and then seeing them here, and then allowing you to get a different version of themselves, and perhaps be more impressed with what you see here from a certain well, like we have Anthony Corelli, who's always known as Santino, wrestle in Bloodsport 2 against Simon Grimm. And I anybody that only knows Corelli as Santino, when you go watch him in this match, you're just gonna, it's like a completely different animal, and it's not, and it will not be the kind of thing where like, oh, this guy's aping a bunch of stuff to appear to be the thing. Like, no, that's never going to be the case.
Yeah.
This guy is 100%. And we have people like what is his name now? He's in a team in WWE, and the Rascals, they just won something, but I don't think they're called Rascals anymore. Zachary Wentz also is in Bloodsport 2 from Atlantic City. So I mean, there's a lot more to explore. Not to mention, you can watch the match of myself versus Minoru Suzuki from Bloodsport 1 up on YouTube. But we felt like pandemic restrictions affected us the least of other professional wrestling products. And not to say that we don't like having a live audience, because that's part of this whole business, and we love it. And I love having people in that environment to experience these things, for that once in a lifetime moment that it is when you're at that show for the first time. But we knew that with our product and with the way that we could do things, that not having an audience wasn't actually a deficit. It was something that we could take advantage of. And that's the thing about restrictions is, on the surface, it always seems like, what a bummer, but in fact, restrictions can be a great motivator for ingenuity.
Yeah, necessity is the mother of invention.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of things coming out of this out of this period of time that will have a lasting effect, just due to how well it works.
One hope so.
What is the schedule of Bloodsport that you'd want to have ideally, and then like how is it going to be going forward? Because
we're still trying to work that out. We do have Bloodsport 5 this weekend with Jon Moxley versus Davey Boy Smith Jr. and Chris Dickinson versus J.R. Kratos, the battle of the Baldies, and the return of Super Beast and Bad Dude Tito and Simon Grimm and the youngest, most roaringest of lions, Alex Coughlin, and everybody else. Regular Beast was at home sick, so we weren't able to bring him in.
Well, that is a shame. That's unfortunate.
But I have. No, Regular Beast couldn't make it, and we do have someone out there trying to get a hold of Super Duper Beast to see.
I don't think you're big enough time for that yet.
We're working on it. We at least got our feelers.
We were so impressed with some of the scary human specimens that you are getting, and like you're talking about it's really about bringing it into the ring and focusing on that, and you don't have the long-term storytelling potential. But then what that does to just be told, this guy is Super Beast and we don't know a lot about him, and he's just going to do what he does. That's fascinating.
Yeah,
it works. I mean, let's go dissect wrestling throughout the eras, just even in a very surface level element. This kind of stuff has always existed, and I look at wrestling as one of those things. And when I say wrestling, let's even close that box onto the professional wrestling, specifically with we'll even just stick with the work side of it, and that is, it is one of those things that is a direct view into the human behavior and human condition, and the stories that are told are the same stories that all humans and all people tell over all history. And you could take probably a religious story and overlay that onto something from Bloodsport, and it would fit, because it's that heroic ideal, it's the overcoming, it is the things that are
hero's journey,
very Joseph Campbell, and it is very much drawing upon those things that every human across all time and space knows is inspiring and interesting to them. And we love, Super Beast is an unknown, but the one thing you do know about him is don't fuck with him. But but you know, hey, we are trying to do more things as much as we can, like you know, with our normal Bloodsport presentations. We always do an opening ceremony like Pride, and we also did a press conference for Bloodsport 2, and we got some people out there to ask questions. We had some wrestlers up there to talk about their upcoming bouts for on the night, then in the next night, and this guy. So one of our top Bloodsport talents is this guy named Eric Hammer, also a very scary individual. And this guy in the audience goes, he asks him a question, and Hammer just picks the mic up and looks dead through the guy and just tells him how it is. And the dude comes up to me and goes, I thought he was going to jump over that table and kill me. I was not. I thought like I made the biggest mistake in my life asking him that question. And I couldn't figure out whether if it was the way I asked him, if it was the question itself. Like all I know is I had stepped in it and I didn't know how to get out of it.
Do you think that like doing your show the way you do it with people who come in for one show and they don't necessarily have like long-term relationships, that creates an interesting like dynamic between performers that don't know each other intimately, like as coworkers?
I'm not saying that these guys don't know each other. Actually, it very easily could be that there's plenty of overlap here, at the very least. And this is something I've made quite public knowledge, even through just listening to my commentary over these things. And that is, hell, I've trained a ton of these people in one way or the other. And I know, you know, it's funny because I've been in wrestling, the wrestling side of things, for as long as I have. 2000, I guess you could say, yeah, 2002, since 2002. So, you know, I've been involved in professional wrestling, working and otherwise. But there's actually a lot of, it seems to be unknown that I've had a hand in training so many people. Like, I mean, I've even trained Shinsuke Nakamura before. So if you see him do a reversal, if someone tries to whip him and he reverses it into a flying triangle, that's because I taught him how to do that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's things of that nature. Or like Tatsutoshi Goto, or not Tatsutoshi Goto, Hiroki Goto, the other Goto at the time when I was in New Japan, was the guy I used to warm up before I fought for the King of Pancrase title. You know, and I had Manabu Nakanishi in my corner, or that I trained oh, God damn it. My mind is absolutely hitting a blank. How is that? Takashi Iizuka was a tag team partner of mine. We were undefeated, and I also trained him to do a shoot catch wrestling match against Minoru Suzuki that went to a draw. So, I mean, and I could go on and on and on with these kind of crazy stories, but so I'm really, really glad to also give a highlight to these people that I know personally are really talented if given the right opportunity, if given the right space to let themselves show out. And you know, I love to do that with Bloodsport, as well as just trying to build up this place in wrestling, this part of wrestling that doesn't really exist that much anymore. And
yeah,
you know, it is what it is.
How hard
I
is
was
it to
wondering
get?
about the I was wondering about the structure of the show, because watching it seemed like there were some matches where, for someone who's never seen it before, you'd be able to, you know, you learn the style. So how much of the show are you sort of structuring it to teach people what this style is versus people who are already in the mix know a lot about it?
Not that much. You know, there was, you know, I'm the booker and agent and whatever on this thing. So I'm using what I've learned from being in professional wrestling, and like having Gil Guardado versus Diego Perez as the first match of the night was on purpose. And you know, I know that the byproduct is that people are going to learn, but that's not the full intention. You know, I don't think about like, oh, I need people to understand this or that. I just look at the matches and I go over things as a whole, and then I figure, okay, does this make sense? Is this, you know, where's the story in this? You know, how is it? I know that if the things that are important for anybody to understand wrestling are there, if that through line is correct, then everything else will be fine.
How hard is it to transition people from like either pro wrestling or MMA to this style? Like, are the physical demands different, or like is timing weird, or like?
Yeah, it's very difficult actually to find people that are capable of doing blood sport. It's just not. There's not very many people out there, and we have women wrestlers too for Bloodsport. We had a women's one night 4-woman tournament
Awesome.
in Bloodsport 3, and there's lots of female talent I would love to bring to it, but even then it's even harder to find the proper female fighters to get into this too, because it's just a smaller pool, right? So you're digging, and you're trying to find not necessarily just the most popular or over person. You're trying to find that person that has exactly what you need. And honestly, I generally don't give a shit how over somebody is or known they are. Often, if I know that they are someone that's going to deliver, then they're getting in my ring. And Eric Hammer, he's obviously he's really close to me. He's my main training partner for MMA and everything. He's the first person I ever trained from the ground up as a professional wrestler, in addition to doing catch and fighting.
Wow.
And he wrestled over in IGF a bunch in Japan, but people didn't know who he was over here. But I just go, if I stick him in a ring and people see him, they're gonna go, okay, yeah, that's what you think you're gonna. That's what you're gonna find at a blood sport. Or Bad Dude Tito isn't like,
oh my God,
super hugely known in the world of online wrestling, but I know him and I know how good he is, and so that's why he's in Bloodsport.
incredible.
Who else are you looking to bring in? Like, do you have Japanese people that you want to bring in but can't because of Corona, or are there other people?
Well, yes. I mean, that's always that's another thing, is that because of my arc and my history in professional wrestling, I have access to Japanese talent that other people don't. And so I've brought over Ikuhisa Minowa, who wrestled Tim Thatcher in Bloodsport 2. I've brought over, AKA Minowa Man. I've had Hideki Suzuki in Bloodsport 1 for me, and would use him. And I wasn't able to get him for Bloodsport 2, but I would use him in everything if I could. Another one of my students, and another guy from the Billy Robinson legacy, like myself. And I wrestled Minoru Suzuki in Bloodsport, and our first Bloodsport show that we did. So and we had Masashi Takeda as well in Bloodsport against Jonathan Gresham. So I love bringing over Japanese talent, and I converse with people like Tsuyoshi Kosaka and Sugiura and Masakatsu Funaki, and I know a bunch of these people personally, and so I would love to bring them over. I would love to get another chance to be in the ring with Kiyoshi Tamura, or I'd love to bring Nagata over if possible.
It seems like you particularly, but everybody is having a lot more crossover like action. Like the door is clear, seems to be open between you and AEW, you and New Japan. You've got people from Championship Wrestling from Hollywood and all over the place. Like, what's that like? Is that a change, or is that just how it's been for you?
Well, I didn't really think about whether or not this was going to launch some people, but it has, and that's fantastic in my opinion. I'm glad that others are able to use this opportunity in Bloodsport to elevate their profile, to go to a bigger company. I have athletes in WWE right now, and so I converse with them whenever possible. I definitely see them at things like WrestleMania and what have you. I know a lot of people in New Japan still. I know folks that are in AEW. Hell, one of my guys is in AEW, Andy Williams, the Butcher. So
He knows my friend Corey.
Oh,
they used to tour, and Andy used to play he was in a band. I'm so sorry to interrupt because this is such a weird thing. It's such a weird connection. But he used to tour in a band, and then when they had a break, he would go wrestle in some kid's backyard, just like anytime, anywhere. And I'm sorry. So just thinking about that, this guy wants to fight, just.
Yeah. Andy had trained in professional wrestling. He was a high school wrestler. He'd been in plenty of street fights, and in kind of a way as being a close friend, but also as just being myself, I was like, dude, you're going to train with me every time you're in town. And so he would come out. I would work with Andy quite a bit. I would teach him MMA as well as, work with him on professional wrestling stuff. And I would put together things where, like, him and Roderick Strong are training together, or him and I think I was able to connect him with Bobby Lashley and other just, people within my circle. But the point was, I like, dude, you have a career in this if you want it. And I put him in my first Bloodsport show against Chris Dickinson, and they had a nice explosive tangle. And then things keep gathering, and he ends up in AEW, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
I feel like an asshole now because you keep mentioning names, in previous shows. I'm like, what? Why haven't I seen that show yet?
I know. Now we have to go back for sure.
It's all up on Fight.
Oh, right.
Sweet.
Yeah. And so you've now switched everything to bloodsport.watch, which is exciting because that's just going to build your own brand even further. Well,
and we have the bonus for going to bloodsport.watch, although, I feel like I'm pretty proud of what we put together there for a streaming apparatus. I mean, it worked awesome I think I used Allcast, and I just shot it over to my Roku, and it was brilliant.
That's awesome.
But there's a chat function, I think, that goes with it. And
I did that.
That's awesome. Fun. I love having the fans be able to, jibber jabber with each other, even if they're mad. You know what I mean? There's still something. But the other bonus by going through bloodsport.watch is that we can then also get a mailing list together to try and make sure you don't miss those shows, but also do things like we're doing a raffle for anybody that bought Bloodsport 4 or 5 or both, where they can win. You're already entered if you just ordered it, and you can win a brand new ESP Guitars guitar that's all been signed by everybody in Bloodsport.
That's amazing.
That's so cool.
That's huge. That's fantastic. Yeah, that's all anybody wants. They want free stuff.
And we're teaming with Nuclear Blast, which is a massive metal distribution label, and we're going to be doing some stuff with them as well. And
that's cool.
I posted that up to my Instagram and all that. But that's something that gives us that direct control and ability to directly interact with the fan base. But Fight is super awesome because they have such a great app, and that when you buy things on it, it's there forever, which is also really wonderful. And then all the promotional element of it, because people are looking for their wrestling and their fight products on the Fight app. So, there's a great benefit there too.
Which band do you want to bring into Bloodsport? To fight, not to play.
Fight.
Yeah.
To fight? Amon Amarth, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, they've already got the aesthetic. I'm into it.
Yeah, for sure. And they brought Vikings to go get on stage and fight it out at their concerts too.
Oh, maybe
you could do Guar shows now.
Oh yeah.
I love it. I would love it.
Awesome.
That would absolutely match with Bloodsport.
Mm-hmm.
Guar?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Guar would match with Bloodsport, that's for sure. And we've been really pleased with the feedback we've gotten on these. Well, the show that we've shown so far with Bloodsport 4, and I expect that we're going to get good marks for Bloodsport 5 as well. We worked really hard on this, and I loved listening to you guys talk about wrestlers that you weren't that familiar with, but now you're like, I feel like I have an idea about them, even if they do share your first name.
I was gonna bring that up if you weren't, because I don't know if you understand how rare that is for me. But suffice it to say, I went into that match a little invested in Calder McCall. That was cool for me and for no one else, I'm sure. But yeah.
Yeah, Calder McCall is he's the real deal. He's someone not to take lightly.
And he was one of the ones, like, not everybody like had talk time, but he was one of the ones who did. Was that a concerted thing of like the people that are particularly trying to offer that? I want to give them time for that.
Some of it is just a matter of what we were able to just get, and what it's nice to think that when you schedule things out for production, oh, we're gonna have this, and we'll get this bit, and it all looks good in your head, but I mean, honestly, you just never know. You let the camera roll, the mics are on, and what you get is what you get, and so you work with it. And it just happened to be what worked, what fit in with what we were doing at that bit. But make no mistake, we want to, Bloodsport allows the individual, and this is one of the reasons why, because I've been asked about this, and I believe this is one of the reasons why these wrestlers are fighting here, and then these other promotions are seeing them and going like, oh, well, we're going to bring them over, because with it being so stripped down, the individual shines. Like I feel like you really get a feel like who this guy is or who this gal is when you watch them in the ring, because they're so naked, like beyond gimmicks, beyond, you can't cover them up because there's nothing to cover them up with. So therefore they just let themselves shine as much as possible. And whether they say a lot or nothing, in that ring, all is laid bare.
Yeah, it definitely comes across that way.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the best parts about it.
Mm-hmm.
So do you do any sort of direction or working with them and like, you know what, you should amp this up, or like be a little more, this or that? Or are you like, I don't know, making a Christopher Guest movie where you're just like, oh, we're just gonna improvise and see how it goes?
I mean, I have a folding chair that I sit in with one of those megaphones, and a beret that sits off to the side.
You have on your Cecil B. DeMille jodhpurs as well.
Absolutely. I mean, look, my goal is not to micromanage people into things. If I felt like that was needed, then I wouldn't bring them on. Like, what would be the point? I want you to go out there and deliver what I see in you, and that's the main thing. And like I said, I don't normally like to break the fourth wall much. I love and believe in kayfabe 100%, but I know that some of that doesn't exist anymore. But if you want a wrestler to go out there and deliver for you, then asking them to ever try and be something that they're not is probably the worst way to go about it.
Yeah, I can see that. You have to believe what you're doing before anything else, before someone else is going to buy it.
Yeah, and sincerity is something that people pick up on, even if they can't quite put a finger on it. Yeah. They don't like it.
That's so true.
I used to
do phone sales. So true.
We used to be a WWE podcast, and when we switched over to AEW, like the difference was so stark, because it feels like AEW does a much better job of like letting people be people, and I feel like now we've ascended to a higher level of just like letting fighters be fighters, and it feels really cool.
Well, I'm glad that you guys all really appreciated it that much. I don't know, Clark-chan. Let me put that. Also, the throat slash thing that Davey Boy does. He's been my student since he was 19 years old, and whenever I win a fight, this is the so. Yeah. It was homage to me.
That's sweet.
And while it is known as a crippler crossface, I think mostly that was because of alliteration. Because it is correct that in wrestling and amateur wrestling it's called a crossface, but from the catch perspective, you would say cross-facing someone is to cross-face and get their head turned and to try and pry them, let's say, off your leg or away from something, or to move the body. And catch, we would call it a face lock, and that's because we don't want to just leverage in an uncomfortable way against them. And I'm really diminishing things by saying uncomfortable, because yeah, it would suck. But especially in amateur wrestling, like Hammer would tell stories like, well, you know, if they're letting me, well, you can't wing your arm back and cross face him this way, but you might be able to just go bang and just crush him with one. And yes, if you've ever been an amateur wrestler on the mat, you know that's part of the program at times. But in Davey Boy Smith Jr.'s case, so it's an arm trap face lock, and so you're trapping the arm so he can't reach up to fight those hands. And then the idea is, and you can see he gets Tankman across, but it's not enough to make Tankman give up. So he has to readjust his grip to get that chin all the way to the shoulder. And then, so now you have no more mobility left in the joint. And then he's applying pressure even further. And so he's trying to take it past your ability to look side to side. And the other element is, so once you've moved a joint as far as it'll go, let's say, so if you look down or you looked up or you look to the left or look to the right to your fullest, like you get there and then there's nowhere else it can go. But once you've used all that direction in one way, it doesn't really go to any others. And so once the head is completely turned to, let's say, the right, if I start pulling up on it, it's got no more slack to give. So now you're adding force and shearing force across two different directions with no ability, with no place to, no slack, nowhere to move. So the way that move works best is you can do it with their head turned to the inside, but you really want to turn their face away from their hand. And then as you get that all the way pinched in, locked in there, then you start lifting it up and just snapping those vertebrae. So
I would be
appreciate
dead.
you schooling a dummy like me who has never been in a fight.
I'm like,
no idea how much.
Well, the way that you talk about these techniques, like the way that they are described is so incredible, because it comes across like an engineering problem more than wrestling. And the things that you're talking about like are so grounded and real, and not scorpion leg locks and things like that. So there's an enormous satisfaction in it.
There's a way to apply the scorpion deathlock in a legit way too, and I can show you how to do that. I can show you how your traditional cravat can either A, be choking the ever living shit out of you, or B, breaking your neck. So it's like early on when I would work with workers, like when I first started training Davey Boy Smith Jr., I was also training, he also brought along Jack Evans. And so I worked with Jack Evans on knee bars and showed him, I gave him a demonstration on the difference between how you see things in the ring, let's say in the WWE or what have you, versus how it was originally applied. And so I just put him in a cravat for real. And he was like, Jesus Christ, man, I go, look, this is no joke. And then I made him work on knee bars, spinning knee bars, and a few other things, some arm lock work. And then I had him grab a throwing dummy and then work on his bridge and his Northern Lights to get that perfect rainbow arch, and work on his fulcrum to get dumping people over as nice as in that circular motion as possible. And it's like you say, an engineering problem. Give me a long enough lever and a fulcrum and I can move the world.
yeah,
so what was that, Archimedes?
You're right.
Yeah. You're the Archimedes of the ring in my book.
I'll take that.
what is your if you have one, what is your goal for Bloodsport for the future? Do you have anything that you're aiming for, or are you just letting it kind of blossom?
I have some short-term goals. I've got marks that I want to hit, but ultimately I want to build this to be as big of a product as it can be, but within the confines of it never selling out. Like that's not acceptable to me. There is an ethos that it has to maintain. Otherwise it doesn't work. And I won't do anything other than that way. I wouldn't be involved.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like this is the sort of thing where you could start going down that road and get away with it for very long because of the absolute purity you're beginning with.
Yeah, and I don't mean something as nitpicky as saying like, oh, you had a guy with a mask in the ring. No. Things way deeper and more fundamental than that. That kind of stuff isn't really a big deal. but little things like even separating the wrestlers from their merch tables, even like, no, you're here to, you're not going to have the wherewithal to go out there and try to hawk gimmicks. Like, no.
Well, it would have been the funniest thing in the world to me if I think it was Super Beast like had the shoulder injury at the end of his match, and if he threw his shoulder into the brick wall, like put his shoulder back right, and then went over to sell merch directly from there.
That, and I want to keep that distance so that the fans have something that they can look at that's larger than life. I loved being a wrestling fan and looking upon like, I mean, all of them, all the wrestlers you can think of, the biggest and the baddest. I remember even, getting to see the Road Warriors in person once at a show as a kid and just being like, whoa, I want to, in this age of the internet and near endless amounts of information being at our fingertips, I want to try and find a way to elevate the athletes in that position again, so that the fans get that moment, get that feeling again of like, wow, holy crap, this is larger than life. I want that, and I want the wrestlers to be able to embody that.
What was that experience when you were like as young as you ever were and saw that stuff in person?
As I ever were.
Like I mean, like with like at the earliest points that you went to one of those events and saw those human beings in person. Like, what was the effect of that on you as a boy?
It was, how would I describe it? It was awe-inspiring. It was like you were watching Titans out there go to war. And as a kid who grew up in this real sweet spot of the 70s and 80s, where cable became a thing, and because all these new channels were popping up, they needed to find content that was easily acquired or produced. And so you get lots and lots and lots of Japanese anime and kaiju shows and stuff that are just dubbed over, kung fu cinema, getting introduced to this other approach towards cinema, or even things where they would just take B movies like Captain USA's Groovy Movies and stuff like that, and they would run that kind of stuff. And so I'm watching some of the craziest stuff on television. And then you turn on NWA or WWF or something, and you just like, whoa, like, look at these monsters. It's Godzilla versus Megalon right there.
Godzilla versus King Kong. Who takes this?
Look, one's a walking nuclear reactor. The other one is monkey. Like,
thank you. Thank you. It should be why did they even have a movie? There's no contest.
No, and Kong isn't even supposed to be nearly as big as Godzilla at all. The whole Godzilla versus King Kong is a completely Japanese created concept, and honestly, I like King Kong versus Mecha Kong. That's pretty fun. That's a wild one.
I've not seen that. That sounds awesome.
It's good. It's a good one.
I mean, like in my book, like this movie needs to include the Mothra dancing like numbers, or
the little East Island girl, the twins.
Yes.
Bloodsport 7. Just putting it out there.
You really are a pretty big movie guy, aren't you, Josh? Like, and I know you've done a good number of movies in the past. Is that something you want to come from Bloodsport in a big way? Like, are you ever imagining a like Bloodsport movies division, something like that?
I'd never considered the idea of entangling Bloodsport into film production or anything like that. And the closest I could probably give to any kind of, they're not even related, but I did do 2 different roles in a movie from this group called Bellflower, or this group called Coat Wolf. We did a movie called Bellflower, and they've got some other stuffs in the works. And we shot a film back in 2012, and post maybe getting done finally soon, might be released. They might have the perfect edit. But I mean, this is a real passion project. I played 2 different characters.
Cool.
I did fight choreography for it. I've got, I mean, someone gets tombstone pile driven in it. I mean, it's wild. So that's, but otherwise I have movie ideas in my head. I've got plotted out characters, flushed out, and all kinds of stuff. And so maybe at some point in my life, I might meet up with someone where we could write something and put it to screen. But Bloodsport in and of itself is just a wrestling product. There's lots of little cool things we can tie in with it that work, especially in the metal industry. But
yes,
mostly, the emphasis is the fighters. That's the point. The fighters in this, sacred ground.
So this next Bloodsport 5, we have Jon Moxley finally hitting the mat. Not against you, though I'm hoping at some point in the future that will be a thing. It seems like his character plays well into this exact type of wrestling. For the potential AEW fans, which I really hope everybody does watch it because they should, it's really good. What would you want them to take away from it? What do you, how would you sell it to them?
I would say it's a unique challenge to any wrestler that you may know of, and that in it, this is a place, if you're a Moxley fan, you get to see him the purest you'll ever find him in a scenario where he is quite possibly at most risk.
Yes, absolutely.
Davey Boy Smith Jr., yes, it is very on the nose. But let me tell you, even when I was training him, he was maybe in his early 20s. And I remember he was like, well, how do you go when you do pull-ups? How do you do them and this and that? And I'm watching him, and he struggled to do 2 pull-ups back then. He was like still an enormous kid. And I think he was in WWE at the time. And yet if he grabbed a hold of you, it was like you just got grabbed by a wild beast. He was insanely strong. And I go, I don't know why. Maybe you were too busy. Instead of pulling yourself up, maybe you're trying to pull the bar and bend it. I don't know. But the amount of, this dates me, but there used to be these Samsonite luggage commercials where the person would check their bag in and it would go on this conveyor into the downstairs area, and the camera would follow it. And then when the bag would come down the belt into wherever the sorting goes at the airport, there's a gorilla there, and it just beats the living shit out of every bag that comes through, And the Samsonite bag, it would get pissed because it couldn't wreck it. And so I would say it doesn't matter how much Harry or Davey Boy Smith Jr. can lift. When he gets a hold, it's like the Samsonite gorilla getting on you and just trying to pull you apart. I mean, it is bonkers. I once watched him sparring with a Ryzen fighter in the ring, and he got mad at himself because he wasn't performing to the way he wanted to. His arms were getting gassed out, and he wasn't able to strike as well as he'd wanted to, and he was taking shots. So he just got so pissed, he just like put his hands down and put his head forward and just let himself like eat punches to teach himself a lesson. I was like,
that's insane.
Bring your hands up. Like, this isn't going to help anything.
That is wild.
Davey Boy Smith Jr. is not to be trifled with.
This is going to be really exciting. I'm very excited. You've been so generous with your time with us today. Thank you so much.
Well, I mean, it helped to listen to you guys ahead of time. Got Clark Chan over here really trying to get on my good side while that Cerberus in the background. we got Calder over here with his mad genius look. Either that or he looks like a craft beer distiller.
I mean, if I'm in quarantine conditions long enough, I'll probably start brewing beer. I don't.
Yeah, you like hops. Come talk to me. Yeah.
All I have is this extremely fat cat in the background.
Those are wonderful. I do like how you've got the wallpaper with the trees on it. And
you can't.
Yeah, very.
You can't see the painting she's got back there well enough, but the eyes are moving around.
There's someone back there.
Well, it is pretty. It does stand out to me. It's like comic books. There's a drape. But at least he's got his cover to keep his piece for popping on the mic, and then it's all, "Hi, I am delicate, and I have thought of this, and I love my abode to be of such a nature as it brings peace." And you, it's like, wow.
Well,
That's exactly right.
Don't be fooled. Teresa has gotten frustrated in a fight and started taking them in the face deliberately herself.
I mean, it could happen to any one of us, and I love her effing and jeffing on the podcast I was listening to is pretty funny. But I think to me it was just a stark contrast in that, yeah, us guys will live in absolute filth as long as we've got like the thing that we like, and she's like, that's not acceptable.
I didn't even think, I wasn't planning ahead. I didn't think actually my apartment would be visible. So, well, here it is.
Well, this is mine. You know, I've got art up and all kinds of like just little whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter.
That's
stuff
a
over here.
She-Ra doll, a mounted She-Ra doll. And then I have this awesome drawing of, I went to a comic book signing and there was one of the Simpsons artists was there. And so he did a cool Mr. Burns that says, "Why? Of course I believe in green energy." Great.
A Simpsons artist used to come to these amateur MMA fights in LA called the University of Mixed Martial Arts, and my buddies were the promoters of it. And so he'd bring they were one of them, the Simpsons artist was friends with my buddy. And so one time maybe it was a writer who brought an artist, something like that. And so I ended up with a doodle of somebody doing Simpsons characters doing MMA from being at one of these shows. So cool. And I've got it somewhere, but I was pretty rad.
That is awesome.
And I did Dana Gould's
podcast.
Yeah, I did his podcast.
That was fantastic.
Who is known for writing for The Simpsons.
Yes, he's I just want to thank every individual that's ever had anything to do with that show from the bottom of my heart for giving me a lifetime of peace and joy from that show alone.
It's wonderful. And there are, I think it was the other day someone brought up the whole boys and girls, our brothers and sisters are natural enemies, just like the Scots and the Irish, the English and Scots and Japanese, Scots and other Scots. Damn it! The Scots ruined Scotland, and then Skinner is all, and he goes, "Wow, you Scots sure sound like a contentious people. You just made an enemy for life,
Oh God.
Yeah, so we let the Simpsons references fly free. The taste like burning or go banana.
Why do I have 3 kids and no money? Why can't I have no kids and 3 money?
Or the sting roll, the stinger. They don't allow that anymore.
Oh yeah. Oh my God, that was so funny.
Yeah, I think you meant. You look like someone who is as happy as got 2 knives. I think me 2 wives. He's like, nah, this feels pretty good.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Oh my.
So yeah, we could do this all day.
So much fun. I can't wait to see this next episode. I'm calling it episodes. These are more like events,
Yes.
because they're not episodic. They're, whenever you're able to get this together and the conditions are right.
And I guess to further clarify, I have some ideas on how we'd like things to roll out. We have plans to do obviously more blood sports this year. We have April 8th in Tampa. We're going to be at the Cuban Club for Bloodsport, Josh Barnett's Bloodsport 6. And I would like to do at least 4 shows a year. I don't want to do it monthly. I don't know that that's something we could even accomplish, but I like the fact that there is a specialness to this product.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that works out really great to give each one specialness and allow you to go all the way that you really want to with each one, and to like your small batch beer of wrestling here, to be able to say the same way you get to ride a roller coaster faster when you're alone by having all these irregular one-time performances, the people you can get and what you get to do. That seems like a thing worth preserving for sure.
Yeah, although I would say I'm more or less a small batch whiskey maker than beer, but
excellent choice. Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh. Really appreciate you hanging out with us.
You're welcome, and I hope you guys enjoy Bloodsport 5, and that's coming up this weekend at bloodsport.watch. Buy the event if you haven't already, and that will put you into entry to win a possible ESP guitar signed by every performer, every athlete from Bloodsport 4 and 5.
Even regular Beast?
Even regular Beast. Yeah, we need to corral him for that one.
Oh boy. Well, if I get that guitar, I'm gonna use Super Beast's autograph to try to figure out who he is and where he's from, since you guys don't have that details.
And how much he weighs.
How much he weighs. Yeah, feel free. We'd like to know too. Send us a message on AOL to let us know.
Oh boy.